ref. Actually got the ball. Yes, good evening, Spurs fans, and welcome back to the Irish Hotspur with your boys Dave, Jack, Soren, and Dermot here today as we build up because Tottenham are back in action, this time at home against Crystal Palace at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium, 8 p.m. kickoff. And look, I think Tottenham had one of their worst nights of the season last night, and we weren't even playing. Of course, Nottingham Forest picking up a point away to Man City, and West Ham beating Fulham away 1-0, a quite fortuitous goal as well. Now puts Tottenham just 1 point above relegation, which means today is a must-win, especially with Liverpool on the horizon as our next league game, and we do traditionally not do well against them. So it puts even more pressure and even more importance as the games take on. And all I can say to Spurs fans is we've got to try and get up for the fight. We have to. They need us now more than ever. The only thing is, it'd be interesting to see how full that stadium is tonight. There is so many tickets available still right now as we speak on the website to be able to pick up and go to the game tonight. So it's going to be very interesting to see what level of support there is at the stadium tonight. But look, we've got a lot to talk about tonight, so we'll welcome some people in and just get straight into it tonight, guys. We've got Dropkick Your Teacher. Good afternoon, Artist T. Good to see you. Hopefully you're keeping well, sir. Says, come on, you Spurs. PHL is not happy with Jack's photo. He says the photo is Willing Johnson to score. Look, I think that's many Spurs fans fear tonight, to be honest with you. Dan Coy says, afternoon, Dave and Jack. After West Ham and Forest result yesterday, we can't be leaving the game today without 3 points. Come on, you Spurs. Come on, you Harris Army. Dan, I think if we don't win today, I think if we end up losing today, I think we're going down. I think we're just going down. We are dropping like a stone. We have to. If we can't pick up points today, we are absolutely screwed, my man. We have Dave Hamilton in the house. I'm not a religious man, but please, Superman, help Spurs tonight. Look, man, I've been down lighting candles. I went for a 90-minute workout in the gym today. I've had all the Spurs songs on me. Spurs Club are on nice and early trying to get up for this. Hopefully they can get something tonight. Sean Hurst says, evening, chaps. Come on, you Spurs. Good to see you, Shawnee. We've also got Iceman in the house. Big up, fellas, and everyone in the chat. I'm absolutely crapping myself about tonight. If we drop into that relegation zone, we don't have to fight to get out of it. Look, West Ham, Forest, Wolves, all fighting. And you would argue Burnley as well. Burnley have been fighting over the last couple of weeks as well. We're the only ones without a fight, my man, which is scary. We've also got Leighton Evelyn in the house. Good to see you. Hopefully you're keeping well. We need your eternal happy clapper tonight, my man. We've got J-Mac in the building. Big up, Davey Lad, Jack O'Soren, and Dermo. Come on, you Spurs. Limpy down under 12-man time. Let's go, Spurs. We've also got Gaz in the building. Rumours if Spurs get relegated, they'll go for Robbie Keane as manager. Doing a good job at Ferencváros, and if you're down in the Championship, maybe it's not a bad one to bring in if you're looking at trying something a little bit fresh. We've got a lone flame tonight. We must finally turn it around against a poor Palace team. Come on, you Spurs, absolutely spot on. Welcome a few more people in, and then we will get going. We've got Neil Sharton in the house. Says, big up, Neil. Good to see you, sir. Johnson's revenge. He'll get a brace. I hope not. We've got Sonny J in the house. You're all right, boys. Big game tonight. I'm off to the game myself in a bit. Cheers to Chris, Spurs CC, for sorting me out. Let's hope the boys perform. We'll be awful if we lose tonight. It'll be absolutely catastrophic if we lose tonight, Sonny J. Enjoy the game, my man. If you are at the stadium, feel free to check in on the watch along and just put in a comment and let us know if there's many at the game tonight, because like I said, I see tickets absolutely everywhere. So just check in and let us know later on, my man. But enjoy the game tonight. We are Spurs TV. Good to see you. Hopefully you're keeping well. We've got AK Shags. Well, at least the season isn't finished by March. Fucking very well. Could be this time. You never know, my man. Del Boy, big up Dave, Jack, Soren, Dermot. After last night's results, we are more or less screwed. We've also got Fantasy Matt McShane in the house, or Mutt McShane in the house. Says, evening, lads, it's a massive night for this club. Let's get those 3 points. We need it badly. Big up Ricky Nader as well. Great to see you. We've also got Shem Tam in the house. Hey, Jack, Dave, Dermot, and Soren. Hope you're all doing well today. Best place to be for such an important pre-match plus watch along. Really appreciate that, Shem. I think if we do win tonight, it could be kebabs all around tonight, my man. Good to see you in the building. We've got Wayne Bonner in the house. Good afternoon, folks. Hope you're all well. Time to see if this team have the nuts, guts, and backbone to fight and win, or if they're genuinely white flag wavers. I think absolutely spot on. Tonight we'll know whether they're waving the white flag or not. Wayne, good to see you in the building, sir. We've got Magic in the house as well. Big up, guys. Good to see you, Magic. Hopefully you're keeping well. Barto's in with us. If we don't win tonight, I don't think we will get out of this mess. Big up the Nomad, or the name's Char lad. Good to see you. And then we also have Wembley one in the house. You off to the game tonight, Wembley? Please do let us know. He says, even the boys and all in the chat, for a night of epic proportions, this, of course, is the only place to be to build up to it. Big up all. Really appreciate that Wembley won. Like I said, do let us know in the chat if you're going to the game. But it is a huge, huge game tonight. And look, there's even rumors sort of circulating around, or even a lot of conversation circling around. If we don't win tonight, should we change manager again? Third manager in, one season. Be interested to see what happens, And I would argue him calling out them players after the last game, it's usually a manager's last sort of go-to in terms of trying to get something out of the squad. You could even see a Conte moment from him tonight. So there's a lot of pressure on this game tonight, my man. Good to see you in the building. We've also got Nicholas Walker in the house. If we lose, is that Igor gone, lads? I think so. Well, look, I did grab some of Jamie O'Hara's quotes. We'll have a bit of a conversation around that as we get into it. I've got a few softball questions just to sort of warm it up a little, and then we're going to get into some juicy bits I've got tonight. Big up Roy Park as well. Big up, boys. Surely we win tonight. No, heard rumors that Kinski will be in. Any news? Yeah, I've seen that circulating today. It'd be very interesting to see whether he does make a change in goalkeeper. I did make the argument that, especially after Vicario's kicking, the amount of times the guy kicked it out of play, probably should have saved the Wolby's second goal, in my opinion, as well, against Fulham at the weekend. So it'd be interesting. Like, there is a lot of fans have sort of talked about all season long, should we make a change in goal? And sort of the unanimous decision has been we must stick with Vicario, but it'll be interesting to see whether Tudor makes the change, because he can't keep picking players that are just out of form and rattled by the fight and stuff like that. He has to try something. So it'll be very interesting tonight, right? Good to see you in the building. But look, ladies and gentlemen, let's get straight into it. Jack, we'll start with you. We've now equaled our longest ever Premier League winless run of 10 games, a nightmare we haven't seen since the days of Ozzy Ardiles in 1994. With Palace just above us and the gap to the bottom three shrinking to just 1 point after last night's results. Just how big is tonight's game for belief, a bit of momentum, and the direction of this season, and basically to avoid being dragged into the bottom three?
Feels like the biggest game of the season by far, and then it also feels like the biggest game maybe in the club's history, at least in recent history, you could say. I know we've made it to a couple of finals, of course, in European competitions, but when you talk about survival of this sort of magnitude, it feels like probably the biggest one, just most intense in terms of just having almost like an existential crisis, really, as a football club. So to be honest, Dave, this is probably the most nervous I've ever been for a game, not because it's a final, but because of just sheer survival instincts at this point. It's like we're being backed into a corner and we need to turn into wild animals here and try to be able to claw and scrape our way out of it, really. So I don't know. Maybe it's dramatic, but it does feel like one of the most dramatic and the biggest game probably in this club's recent history.
I just think we'll get a lot of answers tonight, whether this team
Yeah.
really has the stomach for it. Like, Jack, I've heard, a lot of fans saying that if we don't win tonight, it's time to really sort of press that panic button. That
Yeah.
it would show the players have lost the fight and relegation is becoming inevitable. Are we in danger of maybe overreacting with 11 games left, or would sort of failing to win tonight be the clearest sign yet that this team is sliding towards relegation?
11 games left. Actually, to me, doesn't sound like too many games left. I think you can sort of feel like maybe when you are around 15 to 20 games left, you can maybe not totally panic yet. But at this stage, the table is really starting to shape out. You can really see where teams will probably fall in terms of the ladder, in terms of the table. And also, I think the reason why we could probably choose to panic in this game is that the teams around us that we're battling with look like they actually have some form. They actually have something about them. I know if we win tonight, we would leapfrog Leeds, but anytime I watch Leeds, they are exciting. They are fun to watch. They don't look like an easy team to beat. Right now, West Ham are actually probably one of the more informed teams in the Premier League with some of the results that they've been picking up. They're absolutely clawing tooth and nail in order to try to avoid this relegation. Forest put an unbelievable result last night that I did not expect against Man City. So if anything, Dave, I think with some of the games that we have coming up as well against Liverpool, against, I think, Chelsea as well, I think we still have another game against Aston Villa. These are really difficult games that I don't expect us to get anything from. So that's why we absolutely have to win tonight. It's probably also even why we need to get something from that Fulham game as well. And yeah, 11 games, Dave, to be honest, doesn't feel like too many, really. I think the table is really starting to shape out here, which is why this is 100%, no buts, no ifs, has to be a win tonight.
Well, our opportunities are slipping away, and if we don't win tonight, you look at what's to come. You'd look at it and go, there's very few opportunities for us to really pick up wins. I think our last win was actually against Crystal Palace. That's how long ago it was in the reverse fixture. And we need to do it tonight, because you look at the rest of the teams we've got left, we haven't won any of them this season. So if we don't win tonight, it's a clear sign to me that we are just dropping like a stone. Sorry, let's bring you in. Look, Spurs have won 16 of the last 20. Sorry, Spurs have won. Spurs have won 16 of the last 21 Premier League meetings against Palace. Does this historical dominance give you confidence, or does current form maybe make those stats irrelevant today?
I don't think any. It's like we keep saying with derbies and that. Form doesn't mean a shit tonight. Nothing means it's all about tonight. And look, those people that are saying, we're going to play Palace, who are not on form or anything, they'll be saying exactly the same about us. Oh, good, we've got Tottenham tonight, 3 points, easy. Do supporting this team, it just drains you. It really drains you. And me, I'm normally positive, and I can't find anything positive for this team at the moment. I just think it's all right saying there's 11 games left, and then it's 10, then it's 9, then it's 8, then it's 7, then it's 6, then it's 5, then it's 4, and then we've got to win the last game to stay up. We are not a team that's got that sort of fight in us. If we don't put points on the table now, we are absolutely knackered, because the further down the line it gets, the less chance there is of us staying up. And it's unthinkable. If somebody had said to me,
it's so important in terms of confidence, Soren. I think if we don't win tonight, you're sort of left scratching your head. Where is it really going to come from? There's not, outside of Tottenham, you would say arguably Palace is probably the next worst team over the second half of this season.
Yeah, and look, it doesn't help those players that have looked at the results last night and seen that those teams got points, knowing that now the pressure is on us all the time. And I just don't think this club at the moment knows how to handle any sort of pressure whatsoever. And doesn't matter who we want to blame, the blame has got to stay with ENIC. There is no other place to put the blame, whether it's the manager. Don't get me wrong, the players are shit, the manager's not doing right.
Let me read you out a quick stat now that you've sort of mentioned ENIC. You look at this. Spurs are winless in their last 12 midweek Premier League matches, drawing 3, losing 9. I don't want to put the frighteners on people, but these are the stats. Is this undeniable evidence that we simply lack the squad depth to compete when the games come in thick and fast? Or is it more about lack of mentality and maybe lack of the right preparation heading into games?
I think it's everything. I think you look at the January transfer window, especially, look, none of them have been good for a while, but the January transfer window was an absolute disgrace. It doesn't matter whether we got players in on loan till the end of the season or whatever. You can't tell me there weren't players that were good enough to come to Tottenham and play in a squad where we need some players. And for a club to be our club to be in this situation where we're talking about 1 point above relegation with 10 games to go is an absolute disgrace. And, people were saying last season when, people like me were trying to stick up for Ange Postecoglou, who won us a trophy.
Just while you're on that, let's take Chameleon Eyes super chat here. Says, Brennan about to bang us up, boys, and we deserve it for sacking our captain, trophy-winning manager, and top scorer in one summer. We fall from within.
And look,
I think it's spot on.
I think he's spot on. A lot of fans wanted change last season. We've got change, and this is what change looks like for us at the moment. And, it's not about who was right, who was wrong, or anything like that, but this is the reality of when you do things and rig things up, and sometimes it just doesn't work, and it hasn't worked this time. And we employed Thomas Frank, and probably the worst decision for a long time. Whether this manager's right, probably isn't. He seemed to say the right things when he first came in, and look, I think he's at desperation, calling the players out and things like that. He knows something's got to give. And look, I've just said it, the players are shit, but they are certainly better than relegation. This squad is better than relegation, and we can blame it on injuries and all that lot. But the team that still go out there now is better than relegation. Something is fundamentally wrong within this club. And, a lot of people wanted to blame Daniel Levy and have done for 20 odd years, but it's just showing in a sense that it's further up. It's at the very top all the way down. And Conte said it, we're happy to sort of be top four. And look, I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing, because top four at the moment would be fantastic.
Yeah.
But, this is the problem, that this club has no winning mentality within it. Full stop. There is no winning mentality. And the problem is, when you've got a club of our size, and we are a big club, I don't care what anybody says, we are not used to putting a fight up. And that is the biggest problem we have, because all those teams below us know how to fight for the place in the Premiership. They know how to fight to try and get a point or three. We don't. We haven't got a clue. And 10, 11 games into a losing streak, I don't know if these players even know how to turn that around or stop it. Never mind the manager.
I just think they let the whole Thomas Frank saga go on for so long, to the point where the players' confidence is absolutely on the floor. They were constantly reminded about how great the opposition was and stuff like that. And then you also look at the morale in and around the place. It's all on the floor. I just think they let the losing go on under Thomas Frank for far too long. And what makes it even more criminal is they had the example under Nuno. They should have known it was going to be a gamble. And if the minute it starts going wrong, give it a couple of games. And if it's not turning around, you've got to get rid of them. And we chose not to. But, I suppose that's the difference when you've got the Lewis family in charge over Daniel Levy. They don't have the experience or the know-how, the nous. And I think, their inexperience has really showed in sort of that department. I couldn't agree with you more there, Tremillion. But what I would say is I think the real downfall actually started when we sold Harry Kane. Towards the back end of that first season, you could really tell in them big games, that we really missed the guy. And since then, it's just got absolutely progressively worse, my man. But big up there, Tremillion. It's good to see you. Go on, Jack.
I think it's Chameleon, and thank you for the support, by the way, my friend. Maybe just to be, I don't know, just a bit of I don't know what you call it, just to be petty, but I would just push slightly back on the fact that Brennan Johnson hasn't been banging up anybody since he's left the club. He hasn't scored a goal, in whatever amount of appearances, which is kind of what I predicted. It would be true Tottenham fashion for him to score against us, though. Don't get me wrong. And then in the case of Sonny looked like he wanted to leave. I think we probably would have tried to have kept him. Maybe I'm wrong about that, but
he made his own decision, didn't he?
He made his own decision to leave. I don't think the club in any way pushed him out. I think we were ungrateful with Sonny, just like we were ungrateful with Harry Kane. There were a lot of people that wanted Sonny to leave as a fan base, but I certainly was not one of them. But just to push back slightly, Brennan Johnson has not ripped up any trees since leaving Spurs. He wasn't ripping up any trees this season at all either under Thomas Frank. And then Sonny, I do think, wanted to leave the club at the end of the day, just to be petty.
No, fair. Well, look, let's keep it moving. Let's get Dermo involved. Let's hear what he has to say. And then I've got one more question after Dermo, in and around a specific period where we seem to concede goals, which is concerning. And then we are going to get on and talk about Igor Tudor, because I think there's a fair conversation to be had around that. But Dermo, look, at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium this season, 1-2, drawn 4, lost 8, just 10 points from a possible 42 in terms of Premier League. Why has home advantage disappeared in the 2025-26 campaign, and how damaging has that really been, to us in this relegation battle?
I don't think it's this season, Dave. I think it came from last season as well. You can say over the last 18 months, how many wins have we had at one? You probably count them on one hand. It is vital. Home form is always vital in any season to stay up or fight for any championship or go for a league or go for a Europa League or whatever. You've got to win your home games. You get 3 points at home. You always take a point away from home at a very least. I just feel it. I don't know. I can't put my finger on it where it's gone. And tonight is vital. It is. And you were talking about
the amount of empty seats tonight, Dermo, though? You know, you've had Tudor come out, call for the fans, Basuma. I don't rate it. Like, we're here again, watching the game again, so I don't want to hear it anymore. But, you know, there is a lot of tickets up for sale still right now as we speak.
Yeah, I mean, I was due to go, but for something cropped up family wise, so I couldn't end up going. So I gave a ticket to a friend of mine, but I'm not surprised. Why would the fans want to give up on a Thursday evening? I think also the game being on the Thursday evening doesn't help.
Some would
People
argue this
coming
is
on.
where they need us most, though, Dermo. We got to put our
Yeah,
feelings aside
it
and turn up.
is. It is. I mean, you said about the Aussie team and that season, and I remember it as it was yesterday. And I remember following that team home and away that year, and the support we gave that team full of support. And it come to second last game of the season, we got a win at Oldham that kept us up.
Let me ask you, Dermo, just while we're on that, because
Yeah,
many people say this is the worst they've ever seen. And even my dad, a lot of older fans than me, say this is the worst they've ever seen. And they've suffered relegation before.
I think this is the worst I've seen. I think Aussie comes very close to it. Under the Aussie years, and there's been some dark times, believe me, during them years. But I think this is the worst I've seen it. And I was speaking to Philip Brady the other day about the year we went down, and he said the team fought to the very last to stay up. But there's no fight in this team. There's no fight. There's no desire. And to go on to Soren's point, the team have fight, but they have fight for top four. They have fight to get into Europe. They know how to fight for that. This is a totally different fight. This is like you're in the boxing ring. You're coming to the end of the 12th round. You're going into the 12th round needing a knockout to win. What are you going to do? You're going to come out swinging. You're going to come out looking for that knockout. And we don't have that ability. I think injuries have played a say in it. And also going on to Tudor, I think sacking Tudor now, if you sack Tudor, if we lose tonight, you sack Tudor, then you might as well just give up. Then we become a laughing stock. We become an absolute laughing stock, because what does that message send into the players? Oh, if the players are demanding this manager goes, then what do you say if another man comes in? What do you say the player's not going to get on with him? You look at West Ham, Jack is right. West Ham have got momentum at the moment. Nottingham Forest have got a bit of momentum at the moment. They've got a bounce. Look, Wolves have got a bit of momentum about them. I'm not saying Wolves are going to get out of it, but Wolves are picking up a couple of wins. We've got to go up there as well. We've got to go up there and play Wolves as well. So we have got so many tricky games coming up, and the players just don't look like they can be bothered. That's the striking part. The Aussie years, they fought. The Aussie team fought. They were attacking. They fought. They fought and fought. This team for the last 18 months hasn't fought. And we can all say sacking Ange was the wrong decision. We can all say ripping up what we did under Ange was the thing. But it stems from the very top. This is not just this season. This is near enough since Poch left. We've been on a downward spiral since the day Pochettino was sacked. And we've never really recovered from that. And winning the Europa League just put a plaster on what we've been going through.
I don't think it did. I don't think they put a plaster on it. I just think we were, and I said it at the time, I was worried about the Thomas Frank appointment. I said, after winning the Europa League, now is the time to bring in that big name manager again and kick on and have a good summer transfer window off the back of it. And that's where we failed. That's where we really went wrong. Don't get me wrong. You know, I don't like the ownership just as much as you guys, and I have just the same problems as you guys do with it. But I think, you know, the Europa League was a real opportunity to sort of build upon that. And I think that's where they really failed in the summer. And I could see us sleepwalking into it this season. I didn't think it was going to be this drastically bad, but I did see us sleepwalking into major problems with the lack of ambition we showed over the summer in both players and the you know, not doing more in the transfer window, but also not bringing in a better manager from the very beginning. And it's like, that's where I think for this season alone, that's where it majorly went wrong. And then they weren't very quick to rectify their mistakes. They left the footballing decisions in Vinay and Johan Lang's hands, and they just didn't want to admit they made the wrong choice, and they let it go on for so long. And it's just sheer incompetency this season in general.
Well, that's why Paratici left. He warned them back in October. He went in there and said, look, there's no respect on the changer on the training field. It's like a circus. Players turning up late, players doing what they want. You need to get rid of this manager. And they ignored him. And they ignored them and ignored them. And this is where we are. You need to put football people in charge of footballing decisions. It's like me going in to run, I don't know, me going in to run a business, Soren's farming business, right? I have not a clue about farming, but I'm going to run this company. What's going to happen? It's going to go downhill because I don't know what I'm doing. You need to put football people into football decisions, and the Lewis family have not got a clue.
Do you know what on that though, Dermot? I don't even give them a pass for leaving it in Vinay and Johan Lang's hands. At the end of the day, 2 wins in 17 games. I mean, you know, like that, like 2 wins in 10 should have nearly been enough to sack the guy at this sort of level. You don't need footballing people. But that's what I'm saying. You don't need footballing people, you know, to make that decision for you. You know what I mean? It's madness.
It is. And we won't get, look, I'm fully confident we won't go down. I think we will have enough about us to stay up. But these fans that want us relegated for their own agendas or whatever, I think
I'm not even getting into that. Now is not the
no, but the point I make, there is a point, Dave. Sorry, the point I'm trying to make is we need to get behind the team now. We need to forget about agendas. We need to forget about our thought process. We need to forget about everything we have against the club. It's all about getting behind. Is it 10 games left? We have get behind the team. Get behind the boys, show your support. Let's do what we did back on the 93, 94 on the Aussie, where we supported that team, good win or defeat, and we did stay up. And we are going to stay up because we're the mighty Tottenham Hotspur. We're not going down. We're going to stay up because who we are. To dare is to do. Let's start daring is to do. Let's go back to our motto.
Yeah. Well, look, we'll take this from David THFC. We've got a comment there from Colin. Then I've got one quick question. We don't need to spend too long on it. It's just sort of a quick one. See if anyone's any sort of observations around it. And then I do want to get on and talk about JM O'Hara's words on Igor Tudor. David THFC. Great names, my man. You know, I'm also called David. So, you know, good to see you. And look, David versus Goliath in this sort of relegation battle. Hopefully we can, you know, channel our inner David, my man. He says, the club hit a jackpot with Son and Kane. They covered so many of the club's problems. Mentality of the players is shocking. Need better leaders. 100%. And I think that was the most disappointing thing. Like, you could see we had, you know, match winners in Kane and Son. We just needed to build out a bit of a deeper squad underneath them at times and really sort of go for it. And that's where ENIC need to take a large portion of responsibility. If you're a good ownership and you're a good businessman, you realize you've got 2 assets of world-class ability that can go and win you games. And you build around that and you really push the boat out to sort of maximize your success. And they failed to do that. And that's why I question how great at business are they actually, you know, in that regard. And, you know, that's where the biggest frustration comes around. And look, you know, you'd argue if you had Kane and Son in the squad right now, we wouldn't be anywhere near where we are. Even just their leadership, their mentality, you know, to a large degree. Right now, we've got absolutely none in there. And we're in massive trouble. You know, this is why I thought it was always important to try and bring through. I've always been preaching about it over here, bringing through a couple of academy kids and getting them in the dressing room, because if you end up in a situation like this, at least you can turn to them boys and go, well, at least they're going to give every ounce on the fucking football pitch. We're looking at some players now, the high intensity runs is absolutely shocking. You know, you see the likes of Fulham outrunning us and stuff like that. It's absolutely embarrassing, my man. And then you want to say it to Dave there, Jack?
I think he's right. I think we took them for granted. Kane and Son, we never built around them. There was an opportunity to win trophies was when we had those 2 at the club. We would sign the likes of Matt Doherty, would, you know, bring in, you know, guys that were just never good enough, the Jetson Fernandezes of the world. Spurs, if anything, you could say a common thread has been that they've always just seemed to kind of coast, where they just took everything for granted, never really wanted to push the boat out really ever on anything. Even after Kane and Son, once they were gone, you could see that when Ange needed high quality players in the last season, he was given a bunch of kids, a bunch of young players to develop. He didn't get any real top quality signings. The only debatable one might have been Solanke, but even people were sort of debating that in the first place. It just seems like so many opportunities when this club has had the opportunity to push the boat out, be ambitious, take risks, to dare is to do. They've instead gone for sort of a coast-like method, be safe, just sort of ride along, don't really ever try to take any sort of type of risk whatsoever. And they've absolutely taken for granted, and they've absolutely wasted, like you say there, the jackpot once in a lifetime really opportunity of having two world-class players, and also world-class players that arguably form maybe the best partnership debatably in Premier League history, and yet
Well,
they
factually,
just
they've got
coasted
all the
off of
stats.
it. They were like, yeah, fit's fine, best Premier League partnership in Premier League football, and they're like, yeah, that's fine, we'll just finish 5th or 4th, not really care much about actually going further in that. It's just amazing. They've just coasted and taken everything for granted.
I think the biggest indictment of the culture at the football club for me is every player we sign, we put in a relegation clause in there where we reduce their wages. And I know some people go, that's smart. You think Man City, Chelsea, Liverpool, Arsenal are putting relegation clauses in their players' contracts? I highly doubt it. In fact, a lot of them sign on with incentives to win and stuff. And I think, if we were if we had real ambitions, we'd be putting them incentives in the, in the contracts and that, rather than relegation, clauses and stuff. And then Colin says we not only need football people, we need Spurs people. Nobody with Spurs blood in their veins at the club. Look, I definitely think we need to get back to having a few. I think my whole lifetime up until recently, we've always had even ex-players in and around on the training pitch and stuff. And, some of the stuff they've passed on to, like you hear Robbie Keane, for instance, Colin, speak about how much he learned off the likes of Teddy Sheringham and stuff like that. It's the Allen brothers as well and stuff. It's absolutely invaluable, my man. Absolutely invaluable. But look, let's keep it moving, guys. I don't want to spend too long on this one here because I do got better questions coming up. But I thought this would be an interesting one to have a quick discussion around. Spurs have conceded a league-high 14 goals between the 31st minute and half-time this season. Why does this team consistently fall apart 10 minutes before the break? Is it a lack of fitness, lack of concentration, maybe a tactical flaw that every manager in the league has now figured out, where it's sort of like they've copped onto this trend? This is where we hit Spurs. This is where we up our intensity and look to go for the game. But why does it keep happening? Because that's an incredible amount of goals to be conceding, within the last 10 minutes of the first half.
I mean, name me a first half where we've actually played well. It seems like the majority of the, I felt like under Thomas Frank, and we've had 2 games of Igor Tudor, so the majority of it, 95% of it, has been Thomas Frank. I mean, it always just felt like we were just looking to sit off teams, absorb the pressure, not really exert ourselves too much in the first half, not really trying to go for teams that much in the first half. And then we would look to maybe pick them off more in the second half, which at times maybe worked, like when we conserved ourselves. But for the most part, Spurs would come out very slowly and very safe, pragmatic, and cautious in the first half. And it seems like teams oftentimes have taken advantage of that, really, and have eventually just found a way to unlock us. And there was a period when we were sort of solid defensively, but it didn't last that long. I think even Dave picked up on it quite quickly that after maybe the first 5 to 7 games, after that, we weren't really keeping teams out of our net as much as you would expect a Thomas Frank side to. So to be honest, Dave, I think maybe a simple explanation for it is we've never really played well in the first half much this season. But I know Soren has not spoken in a while, so maybe I should have let him have that one.
No, nothing to add. Well, look,
No.
I think it's a pretty good explanation. I think, look, especially under Thomas Frank, who's been largely in charge this season, we'd be competitive for around 20, 25 minutes, and then we'd drop off. But it even happened at the weekend against Fulham. You remember in the watch along, Jack, I was screaming. I was like, they've all stopped running. Something bad's going to happen. Next thing, bosh, back of the net. And it's so infuriating. But, under Thomas Frank, then we'd be in the game for about 20, 30 minutes, and then we'd drop off to halftime, almost waiting for like the manager to come in with fresh tactics or whatever for the second half. So I think that probably does explain it. But I would hope the fact that we've got this stat over here at the Irish Hotspur, hopefully they have that within the club, and it's something they're hammering home. We'll take this from Tremelian Eyes, and then we will get on and we will talk about our manager, Igor Tudor. He says, point being, imagine the confidence hit for players after winning it and watching the club send away the coach who won it and a man who got the winner. I would think it's a joke club and one out immediately. And look, don't get me wrong. I mean, as I also said it when we hired Thomas Frank, and when I found out, especially when he was sitting there saying, telling them how good the opposition, I was like, it's going to be like very hard for these players to buy into that, because you had a manager that basically, came in and he said, look, you play the way I want you to play. If there's any mistakes, I will take the blame in the press conference. And he done that. Every single press conference, he took the blame, never really, ever really put it back on the players. You know, he took the brunt of it. And you could see that then come the Europa League. The players would fight for him in them games once they made the decision to prioritize the Europa League. And when you've also got a manager saying to you that I want to go and win games, talking about winning, and playing on the front foot and going after teams, it's very difficult then to have a complete sort of 180 or 360, whatever you call it, and then sort of worry about how good the opposition is and really sort of nail down into that, especially once you won a Europa League off the back of the previous manager's philosophy and words. Then you sort of do start to believe a little bit. And then when you change the manager, you're bringing a guy who's more of, you know, as Ange Postecoglou warned us, John the Pragmatist, you know, then, you know, all of a sudden, it takes a lot to really buy in and believe into that next guy. And I think that's where the big problem came in. I tried to highlight in the summer. I thought we went massively wrong bringing in Thomas Frank. We should have brought someone in that had a lot more of a CV behind him that can manage a big club like Tottenham and really take them on after Europa League. But we win a Europa League and then we resort to one of the worst managers, if not the worst manager we've ever had in the club history. It sums up the football club, doesn't it, really?
Yeah, I mean, he's spot on.
I would argue, I think Andrew's time was done anyway. I think once he turned on the fans like he done, it was always coming to an end at some point over that season. Let's be brutally honest. But I do understand the point. Once he's won the Europa League, do you give him the start of the next season, which is something that maybe I did argue for at the time. You know, but at the end of the day, you know, his time was coming to an end once he sort of turned on the Tottenham fans.
Yeah, I think that decision might have lost the dressing room because they did fight for Ange. They did run for Ange. As much as Ange had a terrible record, they were clearly still pushing for him and they still believed in him. And I think sacking him in the manner in which they did it probably did kill off, you know, a lot of the belief from the players. But then the manager that they ended up hiring to replace Ange wasn't anyone that we were really that enthused by, or at least I wasn't. And I think neither were the players, clearly. So that's where it all went wrong. I do agree with Chameleon there. I do agree with that. That's a valid point.
Big up, my man. Really do appreciate the support.
The thing is, though, I mean, we talk about getting rid of Ange, and at the time, you know, we sat on this panel and we said, you know, a lot of these players really bought into what Ange said, and they got rid of Ange, and all the clever clubs came out and told us, oh, where are these players? You know, that they all said they'd leave or whatever when Ange went and blah, blah, blah. And I just think...
Let me ask you though, Soren. Do you think fans would have had a different opinion if the club would have came out and communicated that they were sort of sacking off the league and putting all their eggs in the Europa League basket? Because up until we really found out after the sacking and stuff like that, everyone was just left to make up their own opinion, really.
That's the way the club's always been. I mean, look, the problem was, I think you could kind of see it. You know, it didn't take a genius to work out that we were playing differently in Europe. You know, we had a chance of winning. We sat here and said we'd win it, blah, blah, blah. But
well, you did.
I did, yeah, and I was right. And you look at it and you get rid of a manager who, I mean, we've said it, you know, who came in and told us he would win something, put the belief back into the team. The players bought into it. And as much as you can sort of say under Ange, some of the games were terrible. I mean, let's not pretend that they weren't. But there was some exciting football as well. And then they bring Thomas Frank in. And we how many times have we done it where we've gone from one style of manager to another and then back
For me,
again?
it was the words when he first came in. I 100% guarantee you we will lose games. If you're in that dressing room, he's out as soon as he's come out with that. There's 2 or 3 players texting and ringing other people, going, "Do you hear what this loser's just said? I've got Europa League medals still around my neck."
I think sometimes we can read into things too much. I mean, I get what you're saying, and I agree with you. You know, it's not sometimes the right thing to say, but it's an obvious thing to say as well. But I don't know. I just don't think any of the players ever bought into Thomas Frank. I mean, you look at when he left, what did he get? 2 players come out, 3 players and said, thank you or whatever. And short and sweet. Whereas when Ange left, it was like 9 or 10 big, long messages, blah, blah, blah. But it wasn't the fact that they got rid of Ange. It was the fact they didn't replace him with a similar style of manager that took us a level up. You know, we kind of went from Ange, and every time we get a manager, we go sideways rather than forwards.
Yeah.
And
anyway,
Thomas Frank might have worked had he come in after, say, Nuno or something like that.
Yeah.
But you can't bring Thomas Frank in after having a manager that says, right, just kick the ball, you know, get the ball down the other end and score. And if they score, we'll score again. It just hasn't been. I mean, I look at this season and I cannot honestly think of one exciting game this year. Never mind, you know, where we say, oh, well, we've conceded between 31 and 45 minutes. It doesn't matter which minute you pick in the game, we've always looked like we were going to concede under, you know, and they took far too long. I mean, I applaud them in the sense of trying to stick by a manager, but sometimes you've got to look at it and think this is the wrong manager to stick by. You know, we stuck by Ange and he won us a trophy. There was never any feeling that Thomas Frank was going to win us a trophy. Never. Yeah. But I mean, I'm not blaming Thomas Frank because he accepted a job that was offered to him. Fair enough.
Look, he's always going to take a stab at it, you know what I mean? Like, always going to,
you know, I mean, people say, oh, it's the wages. We don't pay enough wages. What? So if we pay these players another 30 grand, are they going to go and win a game for us? Well, if that's the case, then they shouldn't be playing for us in the first place because it's not about money. But
I think the logic behind that, though, Soren, is,
you know, the players, I get it,
yeah.
But you can look at it and say most of the players that are playing for us at the moment, or a lot of them, are internationals. We're not talking about players that aren't at a certain level. But I don't know. I don't think Igor's got the team selection right. I mean, all those that, you know, slate Richard, if he doesn't start tonight, if Mawani starts again tonight, then
I want to move on and talk about Tudor, and then I actually want to get into like talking about, you know, who should start up front, you know, should Gallagher play again as well. But really appreciate the support, Chameleon or Chameleon, whatever you call it. Let us know in the chat who's correct, myself or Jack, but really do appreciate it, my man. But look, let's get on and talk about Igor Tudor here, because, you know, this is something that I've seen sort of being popularized around the Spurs sphere this week. So let's get into it. I mean, and Jamie O'Hara sort of on Sky Sports, he sort of set a high stakes tone, if you like, for tonight. Sort of, he claimed that Igor Tudor should be sacked if Spurs fail to beat Crystal Palace, which you could understand. I mean, even Thomas Frank bet Crystal Palace, right? He described the current situation at the club as a farce and argued that Tudor's blunt public criticism of the players is a risky business for a manager who has only been in the job for 2 games. I mean, Soren, we'll start with you on this one. Is O'Hara right to be that ruthless after only 3 games? Sort of, if we lose tonight, Tudor's position has already sort of become untenable, or are we just moving the deck chairs on the Titanic at this point because we're sinking anyway?
I love the way some of these pundits come out, and, you know, Jamie O'Hara, I love him. I think he's funny sometimes, but he's a pundit and he knows how to get a reaction. And look, what's the point in sacking him? Because who's going to come in? Who's going to save us? You know, I mean, if he wasn't the right manager in the first place, he shouldn't be here. And I don't think he was the right manager, but, you know, it was a proper gamble to bring him in. But I don't know. I just think we're at a time where he's probably looking at it and thinking, I've got to give these players a real kick up the arse. And sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. If they come out tonight and win, we'll look at that and think, do you know what? He got it right. He should have said it. If they come out tonight and have no fight, it's all the manager's fault. There is no win in this situation. And it's like people were saying when we first, you know, employed him, he's on a hiding to nothing, because if he takes us down, it's his name against it rather than Thomas Frank's. If he keeps us up, nobody's going to give a shit anyway. Nobody's going to say, oh, we should keep Tudor or whatever. The only thing, I think, when you look at it, he's got his team wrong. I mean, people calling out Conor Gallagher, and, you know, you can't play Conor Gallagher on the right wing. We all know he's not a winger. Mawani up front, I know you said you were going to come to it. Wrong decision again. Archie Gray left back, whatever. Wrong decision again. You know, we had Sousa there. He was bought in. I know he's only a young kid and he's probably not ready yet, but why play a midfielder in left back when you've got a left back on the bloody bench? He can't do no worse. So give him a chance. And I don't know. I just think these players are absolutely. I mean, they're absolutely rock bottom. Absolutely rock bottom, and they have no confidence. The only way that we stand a chance of winning tonight is if we score first for a change.
Yeah.
If we score first and the crowd get behind him, what crowd might be in the stadium, because I don't think it's going to be full, is it? That's the only way that these players need that confidence boost. Get a goal and get the crowd behind them and try and get another one. Because if we go 1-0 down again, then we are absolutely, you can just see heads drop. And I don't know. I don't know what the thing is, but I don't see the point in sacking Tudor because we're running out of time, and to change it all again, we're just blaming it on the managers, and rather than anything else, it's just a cover up, and to me, it will just show absolute pandemonium.
I do understand what you're saying. Look, obviously it's not a good look for the club, and in a different circumstance, maybe he'd have more time to get his feet under the table, and you'd allow him a few more mistakes. But I think with the severity of the situation, I think it sort of maybe forces Tottenham hand, because I think a lot of people would argue, the fact that he's called out the players after the Fulham game. It's usually a manager's last sort of call to arms, if you like, and then if that doesn't work, then usually they get sacked. It's a bad indictment,
but maybe,
sort of, that you've lost the dressing room.
Maybe he's come in and realised that's the only way to get these players going. We don't know what's going on. I mean, the question is, if we get rid of him and we bring somebody else in, then you might get what people call the manager bounce, you might not. But I just think it's the 2-3 games. He hasn't had time to try and instill what he needs to do. And it's the player's mentality at the moment. It's not the manager. You can only change things so many times. And we all love the thought of maybe bringing a Harry Redknapp in, or somebody who might come in and put his arms around them and give them a different type of love. And I get that, but that should have been done in the first place, not now. I just think that whoever we bring in, obviously any manager is going to have a different style, and you bring in a Sean Dyche who maybe is just going to shout at everybody and blah blah blah. But it's up to the players to actually pick themselves up now. It really is up to the players. It's the manager can only do so much, and I don't know. I just think it's not necessarily a case of getting rid of the manager. It's getting these players to understand exactly. I don't know if they're living in their own little world and they don't realize just how desperate we are at the moment. But I just think the players have to actually stand up and be counted now. It's as simple as that. It's
No, I get you.
I don't have the answers anymore. Yeah.
No, I get you.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people, sort of in that camp now. It's like, look, we didn't get the initial manager bounce we were expecting. It really is all on these players now. And at the end of the day, there is only so much a manager can implement if you don't have players that are willing to fight for you in the dressing room, or their confidence is shot and they lack all belief. Unless you're a really good sort of motivator or man manager, it really is hard to sort of, pick them up out of that situation. I think that's maybe where Jamie O'Hara was coming from. But Dermot, let's bring you in, my man. I mean, Tudor was incredibly blunt after the Fulham loss, saying the team cannot attack, defend, or run. Was that the tough love this squad needed? Or is it a sign that maybe he's lost the dressing room just 2 games into his tenure?
I think it's a tough love the players needed. They need to be told. They're not good enough. What's the point of pampering them? They haven't played well for 18 months, hardly. And I'm sorry. A manager has to come out and tell it how it is. And these players have paid enough bloody money. They should be able to take it and think, okay, we're going to use that as constructive criticism. We're going to use that. You should be able to run after a ball or pass a ball. It's simple. It's not rocket science. You don't have to have a degree or go to university to play football. It's a simple sport. And I think these players are too pampered. They're everything is done for them. And then somebody comes in that is rightly put a rocket up their ass. Oh, we don't like that. Oh, we don't want this manager. Sorry, no, he's not good enough for us. Either they complained with Ange, they complained with Thomas Frank, or he's boring as he's always supporting the other team. They're moaning now about this man. Oh, he's too tough for us. You know, the only time they liked it when they had a manager taking all the hits for them, when they weren't being criticised, and that was Ange's way of protecting them. Oh, that's great. We don't have to worry about the criticism. We're not getting any. So the manager's getting it. As soon as they start getting a bit of criticism, you got Beckenbauer coming out. Only true Spurs supporters can support this team. Go away and play with your magic doll. Seriously. Who the hell do you think you are? You know, are you going to be around for the next 20 years? No, you're going to be off somewhere playing somewhere else, getting more money.
I won't be around for the next 20 years at this rate watching Tottenham.
No, but the point is, just pipe down, do your job, and actually perform, and actually get us out of trouble, you muppet. And
let me ask you, though, Dermo, on that. Let me push back a little bit, because I get, you know, as a passionate fan, I can understand it. You know, you're like, yeah, get into the dressing room, tell them some home truths and stuff like that. But let's put it into a context of a team sport. If their confidence is on the ground and their morale is already on the ground, what does that actually do, rather than just sort of kicking them while they're already down? You know, it's sort of like, sometimes, like, I watch a lot of things about, like, across different teams, across different sports. I'm even watching this latest Aussie Rules one at the minute, you know, that's recently out on Amazon. And it does seem to be, in general, this day and age, that they don't really care what's said externally, but internally they want people back in their corner. And I think that's where some people are maybe coming out questioning this when you put it into a team environment. And that's basically where Jamie O'Hara was coming from. I've heard other pundits say as well, that when you're actually in a dressing room, it's a bit different. You want people in there that are sort of trying to boost up your confidence, that you feel like are fighting for you rather than throwing you under the bus.
Yeah, but shouldn't that come from within? Shouldn't that come from within, Dave? You shouldn't need nobody to tell you, I need to go out and perform tonight. Yet you might need a little bit of tactical, well, you might need to do that better, you might need to do that better. But 90% of it should come within, should become from inside your own soul. I want to go out there and prove I'm the best at what I do. And these players don't. And these players do not care. I think a few of them do, but I think majority don't. I think a few of them have attitude problems. And I think it's right. I think Tudor was absolutely spot on to come in and rip them a new one, because they need it. They need to realise they're in a relegation battle. If they don't fight, they're going to go down to a lower division and get their wages cut by 50%. Maybe then they might realise then. Maybe they think, oh, my wage is going to be cut by 50%. I better do something about it. But some of these players who might take us down won't be here. They'll be the first ones asking for a transfer out of the football club. I want to go and play somewhere else. The year we went down, we had Glenn Hoddle, Steve Perryman in the team. Pat Jennings was goalkeeper. Legends of this football club. All right, Pat Jennings went and was sold to Arsenal by Berkshire. Stupid decision, but look, that's now the then or then. But Steve Perryman stayed around, got us back up. Glenn Hoddle stayed around, got us back up, and we added to it. We went on then to be successful. These players have to realise it's their responsibility. You know, it's 50-50. It's 50% our responsibility to get behind the team, and the players is 50%. They have to do the job on the pitch to show us that they're ready to fight. And if they can't be bothered, why should we as fans give them everything? We are going to give them everything because we love our football club. But it's very difficult, and that's why there's people not going tonight, because they're absolutely sick of the dross and the players' attitudes that they've been seeing over the last 18 months or so.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
Um,
Absolutely. I just thought it was interesting. Let's just take a couple of comments here, and then I got a
yeah.
question to throw at Jack, and then I want to get into team selection tonight.
Mm.
Stevie Fraser says, I laugh when people suggested Harry Redknapp. Now I'm thinking it might have been better. He makes players believe in themselves. That's what we need. I mean, that's the job he done when he came in at Tottenham. This job he done everywhere, really. You listen to any ex-player underneath, and they all speak about how great Harry made them feel and stuff. The old lad says, up the level of the hairdresser and the dressing room DJ. Do you know what? Funny enough, it might actually work. If it's confidence they're looking for, send them out with $1 million haircuts, We know that's a big thing nowadays. I mean, look, maybe Dragosin could bring in his guy. He always seems to have pitch perfect hair, doesn't he? Dressing room DJ, I think we've got him back in the lineup, don't we? That's Basuma. He's back in the lineup. Rooty Toot says, big up, Paul. This morning I woke up and realized that it could be the last game day before we head to the championship. Oh, Rooty Toot, please not, my man, please. We really need to win today, buddy. We've also got DJ Samuel. Half of them can't wait to end the season to leave, but till then they got a fucking job to stay and up. Yeah, look, I do get it, but I would make the argument. A lot of these players seen the trouble that Harry Kane had getting out of this football club once he had enough. It's easier for them to get relegated and get out of this football club than it is for them to actually fight and keep us up. Because if they fight and keep us up, Romero's tied down to a new contract. Van de Ven will have 3 years left on his deal. And the club will you're not going anywhere. So I mean, it's easier for them to get the club relegated at that if that's the case. And I do worry about that because I don't think anyone could sit here and tell me, Dave, we don't have selfish players. Because when you look at the dross that's going on, I think every single one of them, comes across as selfish, to be quite honest with you. Jack, last question around Igor Tudor, and then I want to move on and talk about maybe the striker situation, centre-back situation, Conor Gallagher, and people like that. But, I mean, O'Hara sort of has said in his interview as well that there's been no evidence of improvement under Tudor in the last 2 games. I mean, have you seen enough tactical shifts to justify keeping them sort of regardless of tonight's result? And I think that's where other people are coming from. It's like if he hasn't instilled anything different on this team, then what is the justification of keeping him in this job? At the end of the day, if it was a different situation, I don't think fans would be maybe calling for his head or pundits would be calling for his head. But time is of the essence now. Time is slipping away.
No, he hasn't really ripped up any trees, or he hasn't even changed all that much from what I can tell. He doesn't seem like he's some sort of tactical maestro. If anything, he's more just taking a different approach in terms of how he's treating the players and how he's talking to the players. That's clearly the change that he's made. He's not going to be their friend. He's not going to be the guy that's going to put an arm around their shoulder or be this respectful, steady Eddie kind of personality like maybe Thomas Frank was. Just want to say, though, by the way, everybody, we do have over 500 watching on YouTube, and I think another 100 over on X. If you're on X, follow us over, please. And if you are on YouTube here, we would appreciate it if you smash the like button. Of course, feel free to throw your comments in at any point. But I don't know if I've seen much of a difference, really, with Igor Tudor versus Thomas Frank. The Arsenal performance was just like copy and paste Thomas Frank ball, where it was just sit in, look to try to conserve, look to try to just absorb pressure, then knock it long to the striker in hopes that you get lucky and that you get a breakaway when they send too many players forward into your own half. The next game was a different formation, but we saw something similar again to what Thomas Frank would do, where he's throwing a midfielder out wide when that midfielder really doesn't seem to be at all comfortable playing as a sort of auxiliary type makeshift winger. Like Conor Gallagher was just like putting Lucas Bergvall like out on the left. That's what Thomas Frank would do. And it never worked for Thomas Frank. And it also wasn't going to work for Igor Tudor when he tried to do that with Conor Gallagher out on the wing. I would say that maybe playing, up to the striker, just hoofing it long. We weren't doing it as much in the Fulham game, but I wasn't still seeing any real penetration through the middle. I wasn't seeing us try to play, slip through balls or trying to work the ball a bit smoother, a bit faster. It still felt very side to side. It still felt like very cautious, continuing to try to play backwards, then eventually just putting ourselves into trouble and then having to just hoof it long. I wouldn't say that I could really pinpoint anything that's really been improved on. Maybe you could say the running or some of the effort has been improved, but I don't know. Even Fulham, though, still looked like they were putting in more effort in that game than we were, to be perfectly honest. So he really hasn't changed very much, Igor Tudor. And I think the big worry as well is that he's doing what Thomas Frank has done, and that he's also potentially picking the wrong players in the wrong lineup really to begin with, which is already setting him off on a bad foot. So not much has changed. Just maybe a more intimidating looking guy than Thomas Frank was. That's the only difference.
Agree. I think you're spot on when you said we haven't really seen too much of a change on the football pitch in terms of tactics or style of play or anything like that. You know, we've just only really seen maybe a change of him trying to maybe instill a bit more of a mentality, or the way he speaks to them, the way he treats them. I think you're absolutely spot on there. And, you know, look, some people are saying it's not even about tactics and style anymore. It's just about, you know, putting points on the board. But in order to put points on the board, you have to have a game plan. You know, and you have to get players committed to that game plan. If he can't get them to commit, then we might have to roll the dice. Now, Tudor also mentioned in his pre-match presser that he won't make radical tactical changes yet, you know, after back-to-back derby defeats. You know, so it'll be interesting to see, you know, what sort of lineup we go with today, whether it will be the back four, whether it will be the back five. It'll be very interesting to see. But look, I want to get in and have some talk around team selection today, boys, and we will start with the strikers actually, and then I want to get on to Rooty Toot's comment there about there have been reports circulating today that he's maybe going to drop the carry on bringing Kinski. But let's start with up front. I mean, Jack, we'll start with you actually on this one. I know you're a big fan of the pigeon. Richarlison made a big impact off the bench against Fulham. And by the way, everybody, that pigeon has been flying around my window again today, like it did at the weekend. So maybe it just is a signal that Richarlison's trying to flirt with me and say, Dave, don't worry, I've got this. But you know, he came off the bench against Fulham, Jack, scoring just 8 minutes after coming into the field of play. He now has 8 Premier League goals this season, and many fans have actually done a bit of a U-turn on Richarlison, calling for him to start tonight to bring some energy into this relegation battle. I mean, do you agree? Should he start against Crystal Palace based on his recent impact, you know, as a substitute, or is he actually more effective coming off the bench?
He's just found a way to score pretty much no matter what. I mean, he's not scored a ton of goals, but he scored more than the others given the minutes that he's been given, and he just finds a way to put the ball in the back of the net. Plenty of times, like I said before, he's this year's Brennan Johnson in that he can actually overall, when you watch his whole game, he's having an absolute stinker, but he'll find a way to be at the right place at the right time like Johnson does, and he'll be able to put it in the back of the net. I still wouldn't say he's the most clinical of players. I could also look at a lot of chances that he's absolutely, you know, not made the most of, and it's probably would have been harder to miss than actually to put away the chance. I think he's guilty of that, but he does find a way to score. And the thing that I think a lot of fans are saying right now is that Richarlison actually has experience being in this position when your team is back against the wall. Also a massive club in Everton, right? Where the fans, you know, kind of like Spurs fans don't see themselves, you know, deserving to be in this situation. Like everyone is complaining, you know, about the Spurs moaning and groaning. Everton fans were in the same position years ago. Like they were also like, I think it was even called like the Everton moan. Once, you know, things started to go bad, they also kind of turned into maybe not a pleasant place to be for a player. And Richarlison single-handedly helped them pull the team out of that position. So he's not a bad player to pick for that regard, in that when his back against the wall, you know, he will fight, you know, he will work hard for you. It's just that I would say he is a frustrating player to watch at times, you know, when it comes to his hold-up play, his link-up play, the lack thereof when it comes to that. And I will say
Stevie here, Jack, where he says he has on his own, no, but it has to be in a 2 up top.
Potentially, yes. Like he worked well with Kudus when they had a few games, right? When they were played sort of together up top. Kudus was the guy that could sort of hold on to the ball and be able to link up play. And then Richarlison was just kind of a nuisance, making runs in behind, just being a presence in the penalty area. I could see that. I mean, his hold up play is, I mean, it's exponentially worse than Solanke's and Kolomoani's, to be honest. Like he just doesn't have a reliable first touch. Even when he has a good first touch, he struggles then to really get the ball out of his feet quickly, like a lot of other strikers do. So when he is played in a very isolated manner, like Thomas Frank did with his strikers, Thomas Frank would leave his strikers pretty much all alone with nobody near them to be able to play off of. You need then your striker to be able to hold up the ball pretty consistently. And Richarlison's not that guy. So I could see that logic that he would need someone next to him. But I am by no means going to say that he shouldn't start tonight, because we just need fighters. We need guys that are willing to work hard and guys that are willing to pretty much just put all out there just tonight for this game. Richarlison is usually a guy you would think of when it comes to that.
100%. I mean, look, he had the experience at Everton, Dermot. I mean, you know,
Mhm.
he practically saved them from relegation at points with his goals.
Did.
I mean, you speak a lot about needing fight in this relegation battle. Do you think he's one that currently has to come into the starting 11?
Yeah, I think he's the one that's got the experience of it, hasn't he? For the couple of seasons that was under Frank Lampard was manager, I think, at Everton at that point. And even Frank Lampard praised him for the way he fought and the way he didn't let it get to him. He's one of the few players I will want starting tonight. I do agree he's better in the two than he is on his own. I think when he's in the two, I think it gives him a little bit comfort that, okay, I got somebody with me, I can work off him. And he scored a good goal on Saturday. Did what he had to do. Came on and got a goal. And that's what we need from him.
Nearly scored in the North London derby as well, by the way.
Nelly did, yeah.
Pulled off a great save.
Yeah. Nelly did. And I think Tudor would like that. I think Tudor sees players like that. Right. I want more like him. But the likes of the rest of them, Solanke does work hard, but I feel Solanke also, Dave's been gone. He went missing in that second half of the game.
Yeah, well, that's something I was going to throw at
and
Storren.
that worried me because Solanke usually does work hard, but he went missing. And I just think they need to look at Richarlison and feed off his energy and of his battling thing. Now, Richarlison's not the greatest striker in the world. We all know that. And he can, as Jack rightly said, he's very frustrating. But who do you want when you're battling down there? You want 11 Richarlisons that are going to put it around, fight everything they've got. And he did. He pulled Everton out of that. He really did. So, you know, come on, Pigeon Man, get another one tonight. Make Dave's dream a reality. And that pigeon keep coming to your door, Dave. Let him in next time. Give him a bit of food.
If we win tonight and he scores, I'll feed him tomorrow. You know, I was thinking about getting a Nerf gun, to be brutally honest with you, Dermo, so that I don't quite hurt them because I'll be reported, but, you know, enough to scare them away from the window because it's actually quite distracting when you're streaming and stuff like that. However, I might actually throw out some bread tomorrow if he ends up doing a job for us tonight. Soren, if Richarlison does start, which I think we're all sort of in agreement here that we all sort of think he needs to come into the lineup, who is the casualty? Dominic Solanke, who's gone quiet in recent weeks, let's be brutally honest. Didn't have any impact on the game when he came on in the North London derby. Didn't have any impact on the Fulham game whatsoever. Or Randall Colin-Mawani, who failed to back up his North London derby goal. Well, I'm going to call them goals because I don't think the other one should have been disallowed. So I'm going to say he scored 2 in that game. So goals.
I think you'll find on paper he scored 1, but never mind. Look, me and you have discussed this over and over and over again. And Mawani, for me, should not be starting. He has done absolutely nothing all season long. And I get why Tudor's sort of picked him to start because he knows him, he's seen what he's done in the past. For me, Richie's got to start tonight because he is the sort of player, doesn't matter whether he's world class or not, he will play for this team. And he will try, and whether he's good enough or not is not the question. It's the fact that his application of the game is there. You know, he knows how to be a dogged little fighter. He knows how to mix it up. And to me, you play Solanke alongside him or Matthias Tell. Tell's sure, you know, again, maybe not the best player in the world, but at least he keeps running and keeps trying. And sometimes his decision making is bad. Sometimes it's not so bad, but they're the sort of players that you kind of want that are going to just go out there and actually try. And I mean, people saying Gallagher hasn't played well, and I get it. But again, I think he needs to play, but he needs to be in his right position. And we need to stop playing Paulinho out of position, put him in midfield.
With Gallagher, right? I get he was playing out of position, and some would maybe argue it's harsh to sort of really judge him on the Fulham game. He was woeful in the North London derby playing in his right position. He's been woeful in the centre midfield. Every time there's a pass round him, he's like 5 yards late to it all the time. You know, he's been absolutely shocking. So I don't really give him that excuse at all. I just think Conor Gallagher's biggest problem right now is his fitness levels. You know, I don't think he's as bad as he looks. I think, you know, there is a player in there that can help us if fit. He's just not fit. But sorry, anyway, go on. We'll get on to Gallagher in a while.
Yeah, and I get that argument, Dave, but I also look at it and think, you've brought a player like him into a team with absolutely no confidence, and it's probably rubbing off on him as well. We said it sort of last season when we were losing game after game, and doesn't matter who you bring into a losing team, they're not really going to pick you up unless the rest of the team picks up as well. But up front, look, it isn't working with Mawani, and to me, it's got to be, if it's going to be a 2, it's got to be Solanke and Richie up front. It's got to be. There's no question. I don't know. I just.
Do you know what it is for me?
I just don't think Mawani can play in the Premiership. I just don't.
Like, do you know what it is for me? I just think with Richie and Mawani, I think you'll get a lot more movement. Out of possession, in possession, you'll get they're more likely to run in behind than maybe a Dominic Solanke is and stuff like that. And I think you'll get a bit more pressing out of them. That's just my opinion. Look, we'll wait and see what unfolds on the pitch. I mean, Steve D says here, love the optimism after decent sub appearances, but we're that desperate we are forgetting the amount of times Richie and Ted have been woeful when starting, which I think is a fair counter argument. And it's one I see popular in the chat, that when these guys have been given their opportunities to start, you don't see that same enthusiasm. You don't see that same fight. Well, look, it'd be interesting, but what I will say is where you are right now with the confidence so low, you have to take it on a game-by-game basis. The players that are giving you the spark in the previous game, you need to play them again in the next game. That's where we are when your confidence is so low. We have to give them their opportunity, and that's where we're at, I think. Now, look, whether it's Mawani or Solanke up front with Richarlison, let's wait and see. But look, I do want to talk about this briefly. I don't want to spend too long on it because I do have other players that I do want to talk about tonight, guys, ahead of the lineup coming out. But Rooty 2 did put in, and this is something I've seen circulating all day, that he reckons that the Sun has claimed that Vicario will be dropped tonight for Kinski. I mean, Jack, I know you're not a huge advocate of Kinski. I think you've sort of stated your case on this earlier on in the season that you just think, look, despite Vicario having these sort of issues, he's still a better more reliable keeper than what Kinski is given, the run that Kinski had underneath Ange Postecoglou. Do you still feel the same? Or do you think, given that Vicario is costing us a lot, even in terms of moments, you win that free kick against Fulham, settle it down, push everybody up, send the long ball forward. The guy puts it down into the River Thames. I mean, it's fucking unbelievable. And it's sort of that shakiness, leads to problems. It makes everyone else nervous around them. Would you make a change tonight or would you still stick with the guy?
As there's no defending Vicario right now. That's kind of the difficulty, is that he's not pulling off, I would say, that many world-class saves like he used to. Maybe one of them, he had a decent one-on-one save against Fulham, but a lot of people are questioning whether he should have done better with that Alex Iwobi shot, which I can understand. And he's also conceded a lot of goals from outside the box this season that he probably should have done better with, to be honest. And his kicking has probably plenty of times derailed any sort of momentum or confidence from the players. Like when they pass it back to him, there's just nerves. Like I get nervous when we pass it back to him. I feel like he's either just going to balloon it out of play, mishit it where it ends up falling to an opposition player completely unnecessarily, or he's not even able, when under, no pressure at all, pick out an easy pass, with either a decent sort of lob or whatever to pick out a player to get a move started. Vicario's just hurt us more than he's helped us this season, and there's not really much to defend him. So the only thing I can say, though, is that when Kinski has been given his opportunities, he's also not really ripped up any trees either and is really impressed. The one thing you would say with Kinski is that he is far better with his feet. You can't be much worse than Vicario with his feet. I feel like Vicario is doing his very best to be somehow worse than Hugo Lloris was with his feet. And I feel like Hugo is one of the worst people I'd ever seen in a Spurs jersey when it came to playing out from the back. But Vicario somehow become worse. I think maybe we do need someone that's a bit better with their feet, but also when you are in a relegation battle like we are, I mean, shot stopping is essential. You need a guy that's able to pull off saves to keep you in the game. And you need a guy that's also not going to be overwhelmed and victim to the corner tactics that so many teams will use. Not sure if Palace is one of those sides, but they do have some big, tall center backs. I imagine that they will look to put us under pressure from a set piece. I can't really say which one is better than the other because Vicario, there's just no defending him right now. It's just, in my belief, I don't think Kinski is as good as people say he is. I think he's had his opportunities to impress. he hasn't been able to do it. He just had that one game against Liverpool. The games after that, he let in a lot of dodgy goals that you were really questioning. Like, what is this guy's shot stopping ability? If, none at all, really. So I don't know. I can't really answer, Dave, because Vicario doesn't really if there were a half decent backup goalkeeper, I would
Well, what about my
instantly
dad?
drop
He
Vicario,
says,
but I don't believe that much in Kinski either. So I'm torn.
he says, play the third choice keeper and never let us down. He saw it, Brandon Austin.
Yeah,
To a
I
degree,
mean,
when he did come in under Ange Postecoglou, between him, Fraser, Kinski, and Vicario, he's probably the least controversial keeper that season.
when he has been called upon in games, actual games, Brandon Austin, hasn't actually been that poor, really. But what's funny about Brandon Austin is I do remember plenty of the friendlies where he's also had some of the most.
He made a massive mistake.
And what was that game? Like the second
Redden.
maybe friendly of the season? He literally let a 5-mile-an-hour dribbler roll through his legs in the back of the net. Like he fell on it and then it pooped outside of his backside, the ball into the back of the net.
Preseason, though.
It was, but he's done that also. I remember under Ange when we were out on tour in Asia, he had some absolute shockers as well. So I don't know with Brandon Austin. Like, he probably deserves it more than Kinski does, probably deserves it more than Vicario does. But there's obviously a reason why he's never left the club and why he's also not really been given any opportunities. He strikes me as another Alfie Whiteman, to be perfectly honest, really.
Well, Alfie Whiteman's retired at 27.
Exactly. Like, if Brandon Austin were to leave, I wonder who's going to be really.
Well, he's Mario Kart King, isn't he? Isn't he?
Yeah,
Isn't he the guy that
vibes man?
Things and
He's the vibes man. But there's no easy answer, really. There's no easy answer. But maybe you do go Kinski just because playing out from the back, like he at least doesn't put the players under any sort of worry and he doesn't stress them out, and also maybe have a better chance of retaining the ball. And also, if we ever need to clear it, Kinski has a far better job of clearing it than Vicario. Vicario, every time he clears it, it's either hit 20 yards out of play or he barely even gets it halfway up the pitch. So maybe you do go with Kinski for that reason, but I think none of them's ideal.
I think with Vicario's performances, I think it is starting to force the hand of the manager where he does have to look at other options, whether it's Kinski or Oskin, because look, don't get me wrong, I think he's been beaten a lot outside his box this season from long range efforts. He's suspect under corner kicks. We have to send everyone into the 6-yard box to protect the guy. From crosses, he never really comes out and claims anything. But for me, it's even just the simple things. A simple pass back to him to recycle possession. It's a sloppy touch. It's a poor pass to somebody. And it's affecting the confidence of the team. It's rattling everybody else around.
That's the point I was trying to make. Exactly.
Like when that's starting to happen in a relegation battle, I just don't think you can persist with it. At some point, you just got to go, look, you don't have the nerve of the bottle for this. I'm sorry. I've got to make the change. So let's wait and see what happens in that regard today. Dermot, sorry, anything you want to add to that, or will we move on and talk about someone else?
I need to jump. Sorry, Dave. Sorry, I did say I have. No, just very quickly. I know. Yeah, it's infection. You're making me want to have fun too, Dave. It's infection. Is Rob enough? No, I agree with Jack. What he said. Look, I'd be very wary putting Kinski in goal tonight. As bad as Vicario's been, I think you've been making a massive error in judgment if you put Kinski in. I really do, because how many games has he played this season? It's just I just stick with Vicario. Yes, his distribution's been poor. Yes, he does make a lot of cock-ups, but I'd rather have him in goal. Look at the saves he did against Fulham that kept it down at one point. Some of these saves did keep the scoreline down, and he has got us out of trouble a few times this season. Kinski, I've got no confidence in the kid. I'm very, very sorry, but I just got no confidence.
No,
You
fair.
put him in goal. I think you put him in then tonight. I think there'll be a massacre. But we're going to win 3-0 anyway. That's my score prediction. So come on, you Spurs. We're staying up.
I'll tell you what I think, though. I don't necessarily think it's just down to his form. I don't think the players have a lot of confidence in him sometimes, because he's the sort of goalie, whenever you see him make a mistake, it's always somebody else's fault. He's always screaming at somebody else. And it wouldn't surprise me if Tudor's maybe, we're assuming it's happening. If Tudor's looked at it and thought, I can see what, the players don't have confidence in him neither. It's not just the fans that don't have confidence. And you can see sometimes, when the ball is played back, the players are looking to see what's going to happen because they don't know what he's going to do. And you just look at it, and like I say, it's all right, the manager coming out and blaming the players and things like this. But when he concedes a goal, every single time he's shouting at one of his players as though, "Where were you? Why haven't you done this? Why haven't you done that?" And that could be a big factor. Maybe the players are just, maybe the players are just sitting there thinking, we don't want him in goal because we don't trust him. Look, I think Vicario isn't the only problem in the team. We know
No,
that.
he's not.
And
you have to start. You have to start trying things, though, right? He's not the only problem.
And
you
got
to try.
People have shouted for quite a while that we should, Vicario should be dropped and maybe Kinski comes in, and like you say, we've only seen Brandon Austin a couple of times, and other than sort of, friendlies and things like that, he's done all right as the lad. And I think it's a shame that he hasn't had a better or a little bit more chance. But look, I think tonight it's all about you've got to put the right players out tonight. And if the manager has no faith in Vicario and some of the players are mumbling about him, then maybe it is time. Maybe it is the right decision to change him. And look, we bought Kinski for a reason. And yes, he's had some mistakes and things like that, but let's just hope if he is playing tonight, he has a good game.
Yeah, 100%. Look, I think no matter who's selected tonight, we have to sort of just get behind it. But I'd argue we always do. We'll sit here and say whether we think it's wrong or right or whatever, but we'll always get behind it, ahead of kickoff and give them our support. But look, it'd be a bold move for Igor Tudor is what I will say. And when you're making bold moves like that off the back of your statement, off the back of the Fulham game, and then he's also coming out and saying this is the biggest crisis he's seen, even though he's taken over smaller clubs with smaller resources and everything else. I think the writing is on the wall for the guy. This should be his last stand tonight, by the looks of it, if he makes drastic changes like that. And if he fails and doesn't get reaction, then the club, I think, are left with no option but to really sort of roll the dice again. So it'll be interesting to see whether that bit of news is true or not. Q7 says we are fucked either way, as they both have mistakes in them. Bringing Kinski in to this pressure situation with 10 cup finals to go, just because he can pass, could be a risk. What I will say is I do think he's better from corner kicks and stuff like that, long throw-ins into the box, in terms of maybe commanding his area. But I do get what you're saying. But, if he does throw Kinski in today, if I remember correctly, doing the research into Kinski, one thing he was highly praised on was his mentality. So you would hope he has the mentality being thrown into this sort of situation, Q7. That's the only bit of optimism I can give, because I did find his shot stopping quite poor. I don't think he was used to the power and the pace of the shots in the Premier League, and I think that sort of made him look really, really poor, to be honest. And I remember at the start of the season, on the first international break, a bit of news I flagged up that Football London printed that I don't think anyone really seen at the time. They said that reports from behind the scenes in Tottenham Hotspur that Kinski has been regressing behind the scenes. So look, it'd be interesting to see what happens in that regard today. Look, Jack, let's move on and talk about the left back situation and maybe the left wing as well. But the decision to start Archie Gray over 19-year-old Sousa at left back is a major talking point this week, following Gray's struggles in that position during the 2-1 loss to Fulham at the weekend. We look much better down that side, especially going forward after Tudor made the change and put Sousa in. Has Igor Tudor reached the point where he has to start a natural left back or left footer at left back? Or do you think Archie Gray's defensive maybe stability, because he has been good largely when he's played across the back line, still makes him the safer bet for a high pressure game like today?
No, I just don't think Archie Gray really showed very much in that Fulham game. I don't think he was the problem, though, by any means. Yeah, I think he's probably even worth consideration in the midfield, actually, in this game. But I just feel like at left back, we saw so much more with Sousa, because we do need to get forward at times. We do need to actually show something when we have an opportunity to be able to create. And Sousa, when he came on with Matisse Tell, they were flying down that left side. Sousa clearly has a bit of pace about him. I think surprisingly, he seems to be able to handle himself from what we can tell in a small sample size. Defensively, of course, if he were picked for this game, this would be a real test of that. But I think we just have to go with Sousa just for the sake of actually having that balance down on the left side, someone who actually can make overlaps and put in crosses. He actually also as well, I think, found a couple of players on some of his crossing situations as well. Like he really hasn't done anything wrong with the very small cameos that he's been given. I think he has to play. And as we've said before, Dave, what was the point of signing him this window when clearly we did need a true left back, a true left-sided defender? What was the point of signing him if we're not going to play him? It's just screams of incompetence if you're going to sign a guy that is not ready for the Premier League. He might not be, but we need someone that's a natural left-sided fullback that can be able to do those overlaps, can be able to get down the byline, put in crosses, be able to allow guys like Matisse Tell or Xavi Simons, whoever plays on the left, to cut inside, knowing that there's a more natural player that will go down the outside of them in case they want to slip them in behind. He has to play for a multitude of reasons. And it's just unfortunate that Spurs, once again, have brought in someone who's inexperienced, potentially not ready, in a position that they desperately need. Like, why is it that we tend to do that? Where we're desperate for a certain player to fill in this crucial spot in the squad, and yet we go for someone that's completely inexperienced, someone that the manager might not trust, someone that even the fans are a little bit unsure of, even the players might not even know how ready he is. It's just amazing to me. We've done that so many times. We knew for the last 2 seasons that we needed a true backup to Destiny Udogie, someone that could challenge him for his position, but also someone that could fill in when Destiny Udogie, as he does, tends to get injured. And we signed somebody that's a 19-year-old with 2 years of even just playing at a professional level, really, in Sousa, and it's just baffling. It's just baffling. I believe in the kid. I don't think he's done anything wrong, and the cameos he's been given, actually. So that's why I think he needs to start. He kind of deserves to start.
And I think, you sort of, that's a problem a lot of people had around the signing is like, is this kid really going to be able to come in and impact? However, when you look at Iriola at Bournemouth, Los Semenyo, he didn't sit there and go, well, Ryan's nowhere near the ability. I'm not going to give him his opportunity. You put him in, and he's reaping the rewards off it. So I'd argue I don't give these managers a free pass. Okay, it's not an ideal signing, but he's a left footer that can play down the left-hand side. Give the kid his opportunity. Let's see what he can do. And that's where I don't really give them a free pass. But you did bring up Matisse Tell, who I want to quickly ask you about, and then we'll get Soren's thoughts, around the left-hand side. But look, Matisse Tell, of course, came off the bench against Fulham, had a real positive impact, was direct. He showed fight, and at the end of the day, you see Conor Gallagher down the other side running 15 yards back with the ball. Every time Matisse got the ball, he wanted to be direct. He showed more than any other forward player on the day. And, I think there's a large clamour based off the back of that game, against Fulham for him to start. But when you look at Matisse Tell, even this season, even under Ange Postecoglou, if you want to go back that far, he has been overlooked by all 3 managers, Postecoglou, Frank, and Tudor, and it's never really been considered as a player to really be in the starting 11. What are we missing here when it comes to Matisse Tell? Is there something behind the scenes that 3 different managers are seeing that fans aren't, maybe?
Jack. Soren?
Jack.
Right, who's asking you?
Oh, sorry. I was looking at a text from my mom. Sorry, Dave.
Oh, well, if you want, Soren can answer.
Yeah, have Soren take it. Sorry, you caught me sleeping.
I mean, I think what we've got to look at is with Matisse Tell, who was obviously brought in as a youngster to develop, and he had, he was thought quite highly of in Germany, and I think there's been glimpses of him when he's played, and so, sometimes he's done well. I think his decision making is a little bit questionable still, but again, he's a youngster. But I just think when you look at Tell, sometimes he plays well and then he gets dropped. And we've said it so many times that, if you're a young player and you think you've gone out and you've played well, and then you get dropped, you've got no incentive to keep playing. And look, some of the fans turned on him, which again, knocks his confidence. But I just think when you look at the last couple of times he has kind of come on in, for short periods as a sub, he's done quite well.
Yes.
And again, some of his decision making has been poor, and you look at it and you think, oh, you should have passed it there, or you should have put a cross in there, or whatever. But at least he's trying, at least he's hungry, at least he's giving it a go.
Yeah.
So to me, why not give him a chance? And again, with Sousa, look, he wasn't the first choice by the sounds of it. Robertson was, and he was coming in as a backup for the future. Unfortunately, the lad might be playing in the Championship, which I don't think is what we were expecting. But again, when do you give him a go? If you know, sometimes you've got to put these youngsters in and just think he's got nothing to fear. You know, he'll not fear going out there and giving it a go. And I don't know, the defensive side for Tottenham hasn't worked yet. So just go out there and tell them, just go for it. What have we got? I mean, when I say what have we got to lose, you know, obviously there's a hell of a lot to lose, but nothing's working for us at the moment. So go to the, you know, just go out and play football. Go out and try something. And we talk about putting maybe Richie and Solanke up front, two big players, you know, who can head the ball and whatever, and then we don't want to put a cross into them. Mateus Tellem, people like that, Sousa might, you know. Again, you look at Archie Gray. He's done a couple of good runs and he can put a pass together, but he's not a defender. Stop playing him as a left back. And yeah, obviously, if Spence was fit, he'd probably play left back, and that's a an understandable one. But just give the kid a chance. There's nothing to lose anymore, and it can't get any worse. It really can't. We're at absolute rock bottom. So maybe it is time for some of the kids to come on. And I don't know. It's just not working. So try it.
Yeah. Well, I think, it was like Q7, I think, put it, it says here, where is it? He says, we have very little quality in the team. We know this right now, but now it's about fighting intent, which Tal shows even when treated badly, he has to play. And I think, but I think Sully also makes a good point. Tel and Sarr have just become easy to drop by previous managers. Sometimes it's been unwarranted. And I definitely agree with that comment as well, Sully. Just before we get Jack's thoughts on why maybe Matisse Tel is consistently overlooked by managers at Tottenham Hotspur. We do have over 700 people in-house. All Spurs fans, I hope. Well, there's 13, but I reckon 13 are just sitting there, maybe laughing at us from oppositions. But, if you could all smash that like button or the hype button, that new thing now, I hate change and stuff like that. But if you can do that for us, that'd be great. If you want to grab yourself a channel membership and you enjoy everything we do in around match day, feel free to show some support. Or if you want, you can throw in a super chat with any topic that you want discussed that you think we have missed and help steer the conversation. But really appreciate all of your support in here this evening, Jack. Or everybody at home and that. But Jack, I mean, what's your thoughts on why Matisse Tel has maybe been overlooked? Because I agree with you. You look at some of his impact this season. I think Bournemouth as well. He's actually started that game, scored the goal, and was taken off. He has been treated harshly by managers at Tottenham Hotspur.
Well, I think in the beginning of the season, the reason he wasn't played is because clearly he wasn't a Thomas Frank signing. Like Thomas Frank from the get-go wasn't playing him, even looked to drop him from the Champions League squad, right?
I'd argue he didn't look fit in that.
I agree. But from the get-go, I just got the vibe that this was clearly not a signing that Thomas Frank had approved of, even the timing of it, right? I think we had signed Matisse Tel like a day before or a day after Thomas Frank was signed. Like clearly he didn't have much of a say about that one. So maybe that would explain part of the reason why it wasn't being played from the get-go. And like you say, in the Super Cup final, he almost tried his very best to hurt us. It felt like, with the lack of effort that he showed. But what I like about him is just that in times of adversity and when he has been dropped, he hasn't just moped and, just ended up, downing tools, just waiting for a move away from the club or waiting for the manager to get sacked, as a lot of guys tend to do. He's tried his very best to work his way back into the team. He's come in with an enthusiasm, with a desire. He stands up, he looks to be counted, and he's almost in a way shown the maturity and the determination that some of the more experienced players haven't been doing. Some of the guys that are picked in, week out, that are almost guaranteed to start, have been clearly downing tools or not showing any sort of real, pride and respect for the badge and that sort of thing, when Matisse Tel has been. Matisse Tel, I don't think owes Spurs really much of anything. He's just been pushed over here. He probably was brought in as a temporary loan and then signed permanently as a club signing. But for whatever reason, the guy continually just looks to try to, offer something. He's brave. He looks to drag us up the pitch. He takes on players. He's not really someone that loses the ball, I would say, too much either. He takes shots on. He's actually put away some more difficult chances than we've seen plenty of guys waste in this club. I've liked a lot of what Matisse Tell has done this season. I think I'm kind of like you, where I wasn't actually a big fan of his going into the season, but he's actually turned me into a fan with just what he's brought and what he's been able to do in very little moments. I actually feel like he's a guy that should have been played a lot more this season, whether it was Thomas Frank or Igor Tudor. Like, for some reason, he'll show up and he'll provide a lot in games, whether it's off the bench or starting, and then he just won't be played the next game for whatever reason. I really feel for him. But yeah, maybe the reason he's just not played maybe just has to do with the fact that I don't think he was a Thomas Frank signing, to be perfectly honest.
Yeah, 100%. And look, I'm not going to sit here and paint Matisse Tell to be out the answer or to be the answer to drag us out of this. I think it's a very dangerous sort of thing to start doing, that these guys are the answer. We've done it when we signed Bergvall, Archie Gray, Matisse Tell first time around. They're the answer. You're putting a lot on a young kid's shoulders. At the end of the day, Matisse Tell is still young. But, if he's the one that's out there that's taking on players, looking to take the game to the opposition, where we are right now, you have to use that. And off the back of the game against Fulham, you have to reward him with his start. If you don't, and you continue to play Gallagher out on wing, and it doesn't work, you're going to lose Matisse Tell. I said it with Thomas Frank. The minute he took out Papa Matassar, I said, wrong thing to do, because what message are you sending out to everyone else? You're dropping your best performer for no reason whatsoever. So then there's no incentive for anyone else to perform, and I think it was a bad culture to set. So I think, Thomas or Tudor, he can't do the same thing. He has to play Sousa. He has to play Tell. He has to play Richarlison. They all gave him something when he came off the bench. And if he doesn't, then it's not sending out a message that performances matter. So I think, he's got to do it at this point. And Shawnee Maddox says at this point, it's about the players that put in a shift, and Tell seems more than likely than most. And Xavi is bad at wing. Well, look, we were going to have a conversation around Xavi, but I don't think we're going to get to that today. Breezy Gas says, first 11, final day of season, if we need 3 points. Jesus, I think you got to stick. I think you go Vicario in goals. Adogi, hopefully, if he's fit at left back. Power at right back. Romero Van de Ven at centre back. Paulini in the midfield alongside Bentancur if he's back. Xavi in the 10. Matisse Tell down left. Udabur Mawani off the right. And then either Slanky or Richie up front, I think is what I would go with on that one. Breezy Gas.
Good question.
And Faz 4-0 Spurs. Do you? And by the way, I don't believe that all of them are going to give us fight either. It's just I'm just trying to pick them based on ability, maybe. And Faz Radfar, good to see you. Do you suspect Fulham helped West Ham concerning? Look, I know when you look at the goal, it was a massive mistake from their goalkeeper being caught so far out, but I don't think they help West Ham, because at the end of the day, Fulham have aspirations of their own trying to make Europe and stuff like that. So I don't think it'd be wise for them to start helping West Ham. I think if you look at West Ham's recent performances, I know a lot of people look at Liverpool game, but look at the way they ended that game. They ended it with a couple of goals and that. And, they do have fight about them. And, that's why they're not as easy or as much of a pushover as we are, because we have absolutely nothing in us. They are all fighting for each other. They're all fighting for the manager. They're fighting for the club. They're fighting for the cause, and they're digging in so much so they pulled it in within 1 point. But I definitely don't think it's a case that Fulham rolled over. I actually said to Jack yesterday, I believe it or not, after the debate show last night, I says, I just know West Ham are going to win today. I have a feeling they're going to beat Fulham. And I remember Jack saying, no way, look what Fulham done to us. And I was like, I know, I get it. But, I don't know why. I just think West Ham are going to win. It's sad, really.
I watched that game. I mean, Fulham were the better team as well, which is also what's frustrating. I mean, West Ham were clinging on at certain periods, and then they just got a goal from a huge mistake. So it's frustrating. Fulham had chances. They had chances to either equalize or actually win that game. So it was frustrating to watch.
We are about 1 minute out from the lineups coming out for tonight's game, guys. So it'll be interesting to see who is in the Tottenham lineup. I think my time is correct, 1 minute out. Yep. But look, I think I speak for many. I think we hope that, the experiment of Conor Gallagher on the wing isn't replicated again today. And I would argue, I hope he goes to a back four and drops Radu Dragusin as well. I think the guy was absolutely appalling against Fulham and brings in Danzo. I think Danzo showed more about him within the 5 minutes he had and actually gave more to the game than what Radu Dragusin did over his 80-odd minutes. And at the end of the day, He's another player. Every time he plays, he's directly at fault for a goal. Man, you can't keep persisting with that. And I think this team selection is huge for Igor Tudor at the end of the day. You know, he can't come in here and preach about running and performances and continue to pick players that are costing you games. So it'd be interesting to see what happens here. Are they out yet?
I'll get it ready, but I don't see it yet. I'm refreshing at the minute, but I'll be on the trigger here. No, but I agree.
Super chat here from Neil Kingswell. Neil Kingswell got it eventually, my man. I do apologize. I'm not the brightest spark with the English language. He says, always a great show, guys. I have faith that we can do a job tonight. Let's just bloody hope so. Come on, you Spurs. Look, I'm the same. I'm the same. I was a bit beaten up going to bed last night. I'm not going to lie. It took me a while to sleep, you know, because I was concerned about, you know, getting relegated and stuff like that. But I sort of woke up today, went and done 90 minutes in the gym because the players play 90 minutes and stuff. And, you know, I've got my Spurs songs on and I've tried to get myself up for the fight tonight. I just hope they don't let us down, because at the end of the day, my man, I think, you know, us fans will always be up for it. And as much as we moan and bitch and cry about what goes on at Tottenham Hotspur, let's be brutally honest about it. We still turn up to every single game because we are committed and we absolutely love this football club. So hopefully we are not let down tonight, because the next thing will be, for the rest of the season, we need you fans. Yeah, we're always there. We're always watching. Don't worry about us. You worry about yourselves. So hopefully we see something today. But the lineups are out. Vicario is in goal, so no change at goalkeeper. Jack will. But by the way, Neil, really appreciate the support. Anything you want to say to Neil Kingswell before we get into the lineup, Jack?
No, thank you very much for the support. Thanks for so many people being in here with us. It's and actually
a lot of
incredible
today. Very
how many numbers we got and how many familiar faces are in here with us tonight. So really appreciate all the listeners.
Back for the fight, Jacko.
Yeah,
by the
people
way, big up Paddy Harnett
people
as
are
well.
digging in. Yeah, big up Paddy Harnett as well. People are digging in, but it's very, very kind, Neil. And I think this season has been tough. We've so many times tried to hype each other up, convince each other that this is the time we turn things around. This is the game that we can use as a turning point in our form in our season. It just hasn't happened. But Soren, you know, bless his heart, continues to show up. Dermatron continues to show up. You know, Stevie as well. So many, Martin Knightsbird, so many of the people that have
big
shown
shout
up
out
for
to
us.
Martin, by the way, still not well.
And we just really do appreciate all the guys that just continue to watch and listen and try to make sense of, you know, this crazy football club. So it's very kind, Neil. Appreciate the support. And thanks to everybody that's in here with us. I mean, like I said, incredible amount of numbers here. And yeah, we are, an hour 15 now away from kickoff. It's like we said in the very beginning of the show, arguably the biggest game of the season and the biggest game potentially in this club's recent history.
Oh, it's a huge one tonight. But look, Jack, let's get into the lineup.
Yeah, let's try and make sense of this. Vicario in goals, Danzo, Van de Ven probably is the two center backs. I'm not seeing any sign.
Sousa and Porro, so it's a back
four. He's gone with Sousa. I really like it. He's made a host of changes, really. Archie Gray is in the team alongside Palhinha, it looks like. No Xavi Simons, so Sarr might make up the midfield with with Gray and Palhinha. And then it looks to be a front three of Tell, Solanke, and Richarlison. Or not Richarlison,
or is 4-3-3, or is he still doing these 3-4, whatever you want to call it?
I would suspect it's going to be more of a 4-3-3 or a 4-2-3-1.
Interesting.
Because if he's gone for Mawani and
no Gallagher, no Dragusin.
Yeah, and there's no Xavi in the team. So I think it is going to be a 4-3-3.
Dragusin's not even on the bench, by the way.
Yeah, I wonder if there's anything to do with either injury or just the fact that he was so shit the last two games that he's just
two goalkeepers, 3 youngsters. So we've got 4 substitutions we can really make to try and affect the game.
I like the fact that he's made a host of changes, and he's also dropped, some big name players. He's dropped Xavi Simons, he's dropped Gallagher. He has played Basuma the last 2 games. He's dropped him. Like, those are big calls by Igor. But I actually approve of them. That I probably would have done the same thing, to be perfectly honest.
Sully must be happy. You know, he did speak about Tell and Sarr being easy to drop. They are both in the lineup. So look, let's run through it one more time. I think it is going to be a 4-3-3. Vicario in goals, Danzo and Van de Ven at centre-back, with Sousa coming in at left-back and Pedro Porro coming at right-back. Then you've got Gray and João Palhinha in the midfield alongside Papa Matasar. And then across your front line, I presume it would be Tell more or less off the left, Mawani off the right, with Solanke through the middle, Richarlison on the bench, which is an interesting one. Maybe he sees him more as an impact substitution. But look, Søren, we'll get your thoughts on the lineup here, and let's get your score prediction. 4-3-3. You happy with that? Or are you unhappy that Mawani's starting?
No, I mean, I kind of get the fact Mawani starts because he'll be on the right rather than up front. So, yeah, I mean, who do you play on the right if you don't play Mawani, I suppose? But I am disappointed that Richie isn't starting. The rest, I think, is pretty much how we thought it might be. It's a big game. It's a massive thing. Like you say, I think he'll play a back four, hopefully. I think I'm not always the biggest fan of a back three, so I think that's the best way to go, is that back four. And as depressing as it all is, I am going to keep up my performance and be totally retarded in the head and say we're going to win 2-0.
Do you know what, Søren? I'm actually buoyed a little bit heading into the game by this team selection. You know, to King Hoddle's point, you know, I asked for Noah Dragerson. You know, he was absolutely winding me up. He's been taken out. He's not even on the bench tonight. So I wonder if we got another injury there, or maybe Tudor just had enough of him. Said, look, go and play tennis. Maybe he's listened to me. No, Conor Gallagher hasn't been fit enough all season. He's dropped him out of the lineup today, which I think is a positive. Many people asked for Sousa to be given his opportunity at left back. He's done that. So it'll be very interesting to see how he's getting on. You know, and then a lot of people have sort of questioned Xavi recently. I did ask the question, you know, after the Fulham game to Jack, did we look better without Xavi Simons on the pitch? You know, clearly Tudor does. He's dropped him, you know, and he's got 3 players up front that you would hope each have sort of a goal in them. So, and, you know, we've got Paulinho, we're hoping pushed back into the midfield. And I think everyone will agree, as soon as we took him out, the midfield went back to looking a lot like it did previous before we brought him in. So hopefully we'll have a bit more steel in there about us tonight. But all in all, I'm actually pretty happy with this lineup. Hopefully, I don't eat my words come full time. Hopefully, you know, this is enough to be able to get us over the line. I want to thank every one of you that has tuned in there this evening. Really appreciate every single one of you. Look, it's not easy when we're down here where we are, you know, in terms of having these conversations around Tottenham. I think we'd all agree we'd rather be sitting here talking about how great this player is, how great that player is, maybe areas of weakness of the opposition we can go after and stuff, you know. But when you're at times like this, it is difficult. But thank you, everybody, for tuning in. You know, again, fans have always been questioned. We need you. We're looking at the numbers here today. Fans are still turning up in their droves to watch and get behind the boys. So hopefully they do not let us down today. I want to say a massive thank you to the people who've gone the extra mile today as well. Wembley 1, Nicholas Walker, Carmelian on the double. We've also got David THFC. We've got Breezy Gas, Faz Radfar, and Neil Kingswell as well. Really appreciate all the support today, guys. And not last but least, but massive thank you to Søren as well. Look, this guy gets up early, doing his best to try and keep the UK fed and stuff like that, you know, and it's not easy sometimes, especially with family and all, to be able to just drop everything and come on and do this, you know, and stuff. So I really appreciate, you know, Søren, your time and dedication to this in general across this season, you know, especially when things are going worse. You know, I'm not being funny, but if I was in your shoes, I probably would have bowed out by now, said, look, my head can't take it anymore. So I actually really appreciate the fact that you continue to turn up and have these conversations with us, my man. Very, very kind of you. By the way, anyone likes barbecuing or, you know, stuff like that, slow roast of meat and stuff, Søren is your guy. Cooked an absolute cracker of a spread at the weekend. But guys, I'm going to leave you in the words of Igor Tudor's comments in the match day program today. And this is the message to fans. Be our 12th man. Your support truly makes a massive difference. Together, we can get this club back to winning ways. So I'm going to leave you on that, guys. We'll see you back here in 35 minutes' time for the big watch along today, where you will hear more of mine and Jack's thoughts of the lineup heading into tonight's game, where we'll have more conversation around it, take your comments, and then get ready for the big kickoff. Tough times at Tottenham. We are well and truly in a relegation battle, but at some time, the War Dogs have to turn up. Tonight better be the night. Let's fucking go. Come on, you Spurs.
Come on, you Spurs.